today. I call this meeting of the Estes Park Housing Authority to order. First, we'd like to, do we have a?
We do have quorum.
We do have a quorum, yes. And then, do we have a motion to approve the agenda for today or any changes? Do we have any changes to the agenda?
I'm gonna make one amendment, which I may or may not do before we enter executive session if we have time. I may add some commentary about various things, just as a discussion item.
Okay,
I'm sorry, that was as a discussion item?
Before executive session, if time allows, yeah.
is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
All right, so now we're going to open up for public comment. Is there anyone who would like to make a public comment today? Okay, let's start.
Committee meeting minutes.
All right,
So, I'll assist with this because this is not common.
okay,
We did hold a development committee meeting, so the draft minutes for that meeting, which was last week, correct? Thank you. Are in the packet. Hopefully you had an opportunity to review. They're not here in front of this board to approve as there were only 2 members present. When we hold the next development committee, that individual committee will approve these minutes. Unless there's any commentary from the development committee on the minutes today. They're just there for your reference.
all right. So then we'll move on to the first.
Meeting minutes approval from February 11th board meeting, which my apologies were not in the initial email packet sent on Friday. They were sent around midday on Monday. Hopefully you had an opportunity to review them.
Did anyone have any adjustments to the meeting minutes? So do we need a motion?
Yes.
Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from?
So make that motion.
Thank you. All right, you need a second? Who's seconding?
Second.
All right.
He beat you to it.
No,
Okay.
Stacy, don't forget to take a vote. I gotta take a vote for the motion.
Oh,
Second, then you said.
Oh.
All those in favor.
all those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
And 2
Motion is-
absences.
2 absences. Motion approved. I'm new.
It's okay. It's, yeah, you're doing fabulous.
All right.
Glad you showed up.
All right. So, discussion items?
Yeah, we go to first item, which is our development update. So Mr. Levine gets to kick us off.
How exciting.
So I have quick updates and then a longer one diving into fish hatchery. Starting with Fall River. Community development is currently reviewing the updated subdivision and amended PUD. We expect to have a response the 3rd or the 4th week of March. For planning purposes, in addition to individual unit sales, we are engaging brokers to provide a broker opinion of value for the property based on a few variables and potential outcomes. Not much movement on Fall River at the moment, other than the submittal. Any questions with that?
I would like to talk more with Scott. Scott, remind me, we're gonna have a marketing committee. We're really on a marketing committee that once we start going into a sales push or. Is that right, Julia?
I'm sorry.
Yes.
A marketing committee for Fall River, you and I be working with
Oh,
staff
yes.
on getting it ready for sale.
Yeah, so I haven't scheduled that yet.
Okay.
You're hopefully gonna get an email from me before I leave tomorrow evening, with some dates.
Where you going?
I'm going to Fairbanks, Alaska for spring break, because that's what you do.
Very good. Thank you.
I think it'll be negative 16 when I arrived. It'll be good,
Get a little bit of winter in.
right? Since we haven't had one.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
775 Riverside, reader update of last month. So we received the updated architectural plans for the design development stages. The typical design stage, conceptual design, schematic design, design development. So we completed the first draft of that third milestone, and then the next is construction documents. I also heard back from the town yesterday, and it's we had a question out for them about the annexation and a potential variance, and they indicated that the Board of Adjustments has the ability to provide a variance for longer than a year. Because right now, the way variance works is once you have it, if you don't break ground within a year, you lose it. And so since we're not planning to break ground on this one within a year, we want to make sure that we're able to secure the variance for longer than a year. Stanley Circle Drive, no update on this one, and this project is going to drop from future updates as we've informed the town that they're stopping development at the moment until they can provide further direction of what they would like to do with their town parcel. So moving on to fish hatchery. So the town of Estes is currently reviewing the second subdivision submittal. We expect to receive the response by the end of the month. Variance hearing was held on Tuesday, March 3rd. I want to compliment our land planner, Ronnie Beluso, and our civil engineer, Rob Goss, for joining us in person and bringing both their passion and knowledge to the presentation. Community development, as they do with all planning related hearings, presents first and provides a recommendation of approval or not approval. They found that the variance request for the project fit all of the variance requirements that are outlined in chapter 3.6.3 of the development code. There are 8 requirements and 6 sub-requirements to hit, and the project qualified for all 14 of these requirements in the eyes of community development. Our development team followed with our presentation, and then public comment was held. Our board chair, Eric Blackhurst, spoke very elegantly in support of the development, and the remaining public comments were against the project and or the variance. Prior to the meeting, I had sent an email to a neighbor who had reached out to me. This individual had comments in the public portal against the variance and a couple of questions, one of which was how to watch the hearing, as he was unable to be in attendance in person. Including the request, or including my response below, because I think it really captures our reasoning and essence behind the variance request. And as the public comments came in, I think it became apparent that we didn't emphasize this nearly enough of really the true purpose of trying to pursue the variance. So my response to him is, I appreciate you reaching out. I have seen your comments and I appreciate hearing your perspective. One item that our presentation will focus on and discuss is why we are taking this approach and the potential outcomes. In my view, and you may disagree, we are taking this approach in part due to comments and feedback from the neighborhood and the community. Additionally, while financial aspects aren't always the centerpiece, they cannot be ignored. We are trying to serve the populations that are most difficult to serve outside of permanent supported housing, a whole other thing. And residents who make 30% to 50% of area median income for the rental component, which comes out to rents between $718 and a bit under $1,200 for a 1-bedroom, and rents of $861 to $1,400 and change for 2 bedrooms, and attainable for sale units for homeowners. I'm unable to throw out the target sales price at the moment, but we are targeting low as feasibly possible. I've attached a spreadsheet that I sent to town board that shows what individuals can afford. I cut out a couple sentences there that just talked about how to drive that spreadsheet. We also have fixed costs with developing the parcel that begin with improving the eastern fish hatchery at Fall River intersection, installing the booster pump station, and extending utilities across Fall River to the site, to name a few. This means that we need to have a certain level of lots/units available to spread out these costs while also charging rents that are well below market. Rather than building large buildings and going up, we thought and still believe that the site is much better suited for smaller buildings. That is why we have adopted a missing middle housing approach and have designed smaller buildings with fourplex townhomes, 4-unit walk-up apartments, triplex, duplexes, and single-family units. Our largest building is one fiveplex that we have planned that's only 2 stories high. Took this approach because we thought it was the best type of housing to create a quality neighborhood feel in a unique location with wildlife and environmental considerations, coupled with feedback from neighbors and people. So this is my fear. If the variance isn't approved, we lose developable area. However, the costs that I mentioned in the first paragraph still remain, and I do not believe the town, which has plans to develop the site for housing for over 20 years and received a grant from the county to develop the land, will abandon their pursuit. Therefore, we will likely need to adjust the plan while making things financially viable and continuing to serve the target population. Ultimately, with the loss of developable land, the buildings will need to be combined into larger buildings that lowers the cost. This will likely result in a number of 12 to 24 unit buildings in the vicinity where we currently have fourplex walk-up buildings. There will be larger asphalt and concrete parking lots to serve these buildings. My fear is that if the project continues and the variance is not approved, it will result in a project that is worse for the neighbors in this specific location. I honestly don't know how to get around those with the financial realities and constraints. I'll end with one final note. I spoke with EPHA, the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, in November of last year to discuss and review this project. EPHA is the group that evaluates the merits of the project and awards the tax credits that we are going to be pursuing. Typically, over 50% of the applications for 9% tax credits are denied by EPHA each year. Their main emphasis on the call with me was to make the project more dense and combine buildings. From their perspective, that would create for a better project and would likely make our future applications for funding more competitive. We at the Housing Authority do not want to do that. The outcome of this variance hearing will be a determining factor if we can continue the pursuit of smaller scale building types and footprints. That was the end of my email. I believe that this is an accurate representation of the reasoning behind our site design and variance requests. Found much of the public comments were cordial and focused on wildlife, wetland setback, and evacuation. The conversation was wide-ranging and well beyond the focus of the criteria outlined in Chapter 3.6.c, Variance Standards for Review. However, there was one public comment aimed at myself that was defamatory and went against the decorum of a public hearing within Town Hall. When discussing the financial realities of the site and the affordable housing goals of the state, I was erroneously accused of making a threat regarding likely outcomes. That commentary was and is not a threat, but accurate reflection of financial realities and the most likely outcome. Ultimately, after a robust conversation, the Board of Appeals indicated that they could not have enough third-party information in order to make an informed decision. Therefore, they decided to stay the meeting, which means it will be reconvened at the next meeting after the requested information is submitted. We previously submitted documents related to the wetland and the wetland setback, as this is the core purpose of the variance and the subsequent hearing. At their request for more robust information, we'll be providing the Board of Adjustments with, although we do candidly believe that some of these documents fall outside the scope of a variance hearing for an encroachment into a wetland setback. But nonetheless, we will send them a link to the evacuation meeting, the wildlife report, the urban and wildland interface report, which is the fire consultant, the wetland determination letter, the class 3 archaeological, architectural, and cultural resource survey that was completed on the national parkland, as well as the phase 1 environmental report. We are additionally having conversations with Colorado Parks and Wildlife, who previously indicated a willingness to attend a public hearing, which a meeting with them yesterday, and they re-emphasized that willingness. We sent them a lot of these third-party reports as well with best management practices, and they're going to take a look and review those as well. And we are ideally planning to coordinate our next variance hearing at a date and time where they can attend, so they're able to share their insights and knowledge.
Any discussion? It's your turn now, Scott.
It is. A couple additional comments on fish hatchery and the wetland setback variance hearing. Pete covered it extremely well there, both in his memo and then this morning. We've had a number of conversations internally with the development team, including some with town staff. Not necessarily about what, how do I want to phrase this? I'll just be blunt. A question was asked of what went awry, and we don't think anything went awry during the hearing or prior. Board of Adjustment simply is asking for more information that we believe falls outside the scope of the hearing directly. We believe they were provided with all the information from town staff that related to the wetland setback variance request. So as Pete already mentioned, but I just want to reiterate it, we're going to provide them with everything, including some items that they are not asking for, which again, we believe fall outside the scope of their purview. But we also feel, based on what we saw in that hearing, while there were some awkward moments that went against normal meeting protocols, we do believe the Board of Adjustments completely understands their role and what they are to be making a decision about and what should enter into those decision criterion. But it is still a little bit confusing as to their request for additional information, which again, we believe falls outside the scope of that specific hearing. They're all items that will be talked about ad nauseum during other public hearings, but we don't think they necessarily directly relate to what's in front of that. Anything else?
Question?
Yes.
So let's say the Board of Adjustment doesn't grant the variance, that decision is appealed to the court. Yes.
I believe it is, yeah.
It doesn't go to the town board, it goes.
No,
it
it
goes to court, okay.
Yep.
And my overall comment is just, Pete, thank you. These things are very complicated. And I've never dissuaded you from sharing your opinion. And you got people who have opinions, and everyone's entitled to an opinion, but some people don't have educated opinions. And there are a lot of limitations. You can't just, start a new plan under Etch a Sketch. And so it's from this tree hugger, I'm going to say it is a de minimis variance. And if people want to end up with 24, 36 unit apartment buildings over there, keep it up. Thank you.
One more add on to that. I certainly agree with your comments, and I think it's important that we all remember and realize that each obstacle, level of opposition has impacts. And I think that was the point that Pete was making in the hearing itself, discussing the financial realities of any given decision or impact of any given decision, I think cannot be ignored, as Pete said. They absolutely must be considered, and all of these things are interrelated. And if we make a decision, it's going to have impacts. And I think it's important that we talk about those impacts so that we can, the bodies that are required to make the requisite decisions can understand all the potential impacts. Again, not as a threat, but financial realities and realities of life in general can't be ignored. So it's important to put it all out there.
On what they would comment on, based on not only this board link to the Board of Adjustment.
Oh, yeah.
I was unable to stay for the whole meeting with the state first hour. And what is presented very well. I've been going to the Board of Adjustment now for 2 years. And the longest one we had was 45 minutes. And we have 2 new board members on there. And I think that definitely accounts for the questions, the uncertainty that was attended to. The chair is a long time. He's very experienced, but it's bringing along 2 new members. So I think we need to account for the fact that was not part of anything else.
Yeah, good point. Okay, it is still me, isn't it? Tiny town. We have begun to move forward. You all recall we are still under contract to purchase 830 Moraine, locally known as Tiny Town. both lawyers are now in touch with each other to discuss the life estates that exist, don't exist, have existed at some point. So that's sort of item number one, which will be worked on congruently with some other factors. So Pete and I have begun some back and forth about requisite timing and steps for due diligence that really Pete will be driving, but we'll discuss timing on those today, and so we can get working on other due diligence items to progress down the road, and at future board meetings, bring back whatever our findings are, so this board can make a decision as we get closer to anticipated close date, which is, I believe, September 30th of 2026. Any questions on Tiny Town at the moment? Anything I missed, Pete? Cleve Street, I included in your packet both a link, well, maybe not a link this time, but I emailed you all previously the same material that's in this board packet, which is a communication that went out to all of our residents. This is the second written formal communication that went out to the residents at 157 Cleve. This includes the current concept of a redevelopment of three parcels: the parking lot to the east, our building located at 157, and the what is that space formerly called? The Whimsadoodle did.
The Beetle?
Is that what it is? So the Beetle, which is directly to the west of our building, that is now turned into, I still struggle describing it the right way. A food truck art space. There we go. Let's do that. So I included that in this packet so you all can see it. And really, it's just another opportunity to put this information out there. On a previous email to this board, I included this packet along with the initial packet sent to our residents in July of 2025. These formal communications are on top of many, many informal communications, both in person, email, phone, with residents of 157 Cleve, to keep them updated on the discussions, where we are on those discussions about a potential redevelopment, potential timing of that redevelopment, and then potential impacts of that redevelopment on those residents that reside at 157 Cleve. I think a couple items of significant note that I just want to make sure this board is clear on, and also that general members of the public and our community are aware of. Should this project proceed, which would really be a partnership of sorts between three entities, the town of Estes Park Housing Authority, and Whimsadoodle, EPHA would not only be legally required, but I believe we're ethically and morally responsible to relocate any residents during a redevelopment to another property, ideally to one of our properties, and ideally in a similar walkable location, which that is now feasible because of Fall River Village being in our portfolio of properties. EPHA would also be required to pay any difference in rent. So those residents would continue to pay us rent. But just by way of example, if their current rent is $1,000, but we move them to a unit that the rent is $1,500, EPHA or the development would absorb that rent difference. So that $500 for however long they are displaced. And then they would essentially get first right of refusal to move back into the redeveloped new space at the same rent level or AMI level that they have now, and they would still be subject to any rent increases during that time of displacement. So I think that that's an important point, and all of the moving costs would also be EPHA's responsibility. So that's an important piece of this equation should this partnership and redevelopment occur. Those are some of the steps that we would take to make that transition a little easier for those residents. Any questions about Cleve Street at this moment?
Scott?
Yeah.
I'm not finding it in the last similar handout. So on the Beetle or that far end, there's going to be a courtyard. I know there's a resident garden area. Is there also an outdoor courtyard?
So the current concept has essentially a replacement on the top level, which currently is 4 stories. for an outdoor courtyard area to replace the backyard area that those residents have now. Because that's a enviable space that a number of our residents use and enjoy. So we'd like to replace that. The current rendering, which I believe is in here, also shows, it was a direct request of mine based on feedback and other concerns. If we could lose a row of parking on that top level, push that back and have that open. The artist rendering here, I think they've taken some artist liberties in adding trees and a lot of greenery, and that is very expensive to pull off, not only from an operational sense, but even a construction aspect. So I don't know if the final design would have that giant courtyard across the whole top. It would be wonderful and awesome if we could do that, but there's a lot of considerations at play there. So, but there is still a design to have a small courtyard.
Right. Is that limited to residents?
That space would be, yes.
Good.
Anything else on 157 Cleve? Moving on to Castle Ridge. We've talked about Castle Ridge a little bit. That is a property that we purchased, formally closed on that in early 2019. And one of Pete's early projects after joining EPHA was to get that far enough along in design phases where we could get rough construction cost estimates. And if we recall, those construction cost estimates did it end at 28 units somewhere, 26, 28 units? We ended up at roughly $906,000 a door. So fairly expensive. We have some other opportunities that are a little more economical. So we view that parcel and we purchased that parcel, obviously with the mindset of building housing on that site. But I think we have to recognize that based on some other opportunities, and a lot has changed since 2019, that piece of land may provide us other opportunities. So we continue at a staff level, and then development committee weighed in on this as well to have some conversations about whether we could sell that piece of property and use those funds for any one of our other projects or planned projects. So development committee and Pete and I did want to bring that conversation to this board. So we have a few options. I think everyone is aware, outside of maybe Marty, that I didn't forget his name. I know it seemed that way. I didn't forget your name, Marty. We've continued conversations with a local potential buyer who has expressed interest for a number of years. And so we've continued to sort of have those conversations and foster that conversation. I think the question for the board as a whole, one, are you comfortable with us continuing to have those conversations? We are going to get some broker opinions of value on that piece of property to be able to actually discuss potential sale or a land swap, but ideally just a sale of that property with some real concrete numbers. So we have a starting point. So really the question in front of this board is, are we okay with me continuing to have those conversations? And then is there any interest, even in a broader sense outside of those conversations, to potentially put that property on the open market?
I think what we discussed in the development committee is that economically, that's what you said, is $906,000 a door, which obviously it's above our threshold, to say the least. And the gentleman who you're in conversation with, I think we continue that, whether it's land swap or it's, cash, whatever might work. But if that doesn't pan out, I personally think that we ought to put that piece of property in the open market, because it's just too expensive for the housing authority. that developed at this point in time.
I agree. What about you, Jeff?
We had discussed this at the development committee meeting. I think our consensus just wanted everyone to know what seemed to be going, and if anyone has any concerns or comments or suggestions, speak now or speak later, but just let us know.
I think we continue the conversation, and then if those conversations don't lead anywhere, we talk about putting it on the market.
Yes, that's sounds good. Are there any other comments? So we'll continue down that path, and then Pete and I will keep you all updated as we progress and learn more.
It's again time for lodging tax.
Lodging tax, cash flow. So nothing has changed in the reporting from last month. I haven't fully reconciled 2025, but it's not materially different in actual terms from the last Q4, which is still forecasted on the cash flow. So I'll finish that up as quickly as possible. We've been doing other end of year accounting and then budget related items with accounting, which is going to take me away from just finalizing, actualizing this. But no significant changes. We ended the year a little higher than anticipated. And of course, you all know I say this every month that I forecast our cash flow for 60 very conservatively, as I don't want to overcommit anything. Any questions on cash flow?
All right, then we'll move along to the housing updates. You want to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Yeah, yours is first, so.
And this program report, focusing on the workforce rental assistance program. And so with those tax dollars, the way that we have the qualification standard set up, the incentive program ebbs and flows based on someone living in that same rental unit or not. And so just within the last month, there was quite a bit of movement, people moving away from Justice Park, abandoning their leases, people expiring, and advancing out of the program. So what I mean by that is the qualification ratio wasn't the program guidelines anymore. So either their rent went down or their income went up, so they're no longer qualified. And there was quite an influx of applications. So I ended up approving 12 additional recipients for workforce rental assistance. And so that just further shows the need in the community for the program. And as I work closely with Crossroads on the number of months that they're approved for, things like that, we were busy between EPHA, Crossroads. We looked at quite a few applications. Also, had to clean up some of the records for folks that were transitioning out of the program. So I did include some more detailed numbers. So when we qualify individuals for the program, if they are already in their units, so they're 3 months into their 12-month lease term, we only qualify them for 9 months. And so we don't have to do it for 12 months. We do it through the end of their lease term. And it's just a nice, clean way to do a renewal verification for the program. And so one of the things that I wanted to display in this is that the average number of those funded is just under 10 months per household. And I would say in the last month, the majority that we have funded are for brand new businesses. So we funded quite a few 12-month terms. And then just looking at some of the other numbers that are interesting, the average monthly rent is just under $2,000. I see this number fluctuate greatly depending on the approvals and who are submitting applications. 2 months ago, this number was around 2,300. And so at the beginning of this official program back in June, the number was closer to 1,700. So
it really fluctuates based on the applicants, and it's interesting to see going on with that. And then just a reminder, in order to qualify for this program, we use a rent to income ratio. So we take your gross monthly income, divide that by your monthly rent. And if you are spending 35% or more of your gross monthly income on rent, then you qualify for the program. So currently the average rent to income ratio is at 45.3% before qualifying. So the majority of these 38 households that we're serving are spending at least 45.3% of their gross monthly income on the household. Yes. And then I did provide the property distribution. Really, in the last month, we had 6 qualified at Fall River Village, so that number for the property distribution went up. And then the next highest distribution is actually the private renters. So if you remember the first 2 years during the pilot program that we ran, the majority that was distributed was going to Beaverbrook, which was graded property, and then Fall River Village, and now is tenants out and gone, so you qualify. Right now, we're seeing more requests from private landlords, and so we know that that word is getting out to more than just the EPHA. Since that's what we've always hoped for, and we're very grateful for the recommendations by not only Crossroads, but by board members, by advocates for the housing authority that those individuals living under a private landlord lease are getting assistance. And just very grateful for that to be able to help these households as well. And then the only other thing that I wanted to highlight is that Scott and I are hoping to finalize contract with Impact Development Fund. I do have a couple of questions and notes that we want to clarify, and then we hope to launch that program within the next month and a half, 6 months.
I have a couple add-ons. Shocker, I know. Related to workforce rental assistance program. And I believe everyone in this, maybe I won't start there. I want to make it perfectly clear that during both the pilot phase when we were building this program, during the pilot phase and now, we have, I will use this phrase, plenty of funding to allocate to workforce rental assistance based on the community's need. I had a couple conversations between last board meeting and this that highlighted that it was only about 3-week transition, maybe a month, between the pilot program and sort of finalizing the existing program going forward, that some applicants may have heard or been told through certain channels that the funding had run out. There was no funding available, which was never actually true and is not true. We did pause it for a short period while we reviewed the pilot program, made some tweaks based on some lessons learned, but they were all relatively minor. So we did pause it, but the program did not have funds. And I think that's really important. The funding is there. We have budgeted $275,000 this year. And last year, I think we only utilized about 107,000. This year, while Jeff just explained that has increased a little bit, at the moment, only about 25% is our estimate when we get to the year end. Maybe is that more than that?
It's a little bit more, but it always fluctuates.
Yeah.
I mean, it fluctuates.
So even inside of the $275,000 we budgeted for 26, we believe actual use is still going to fall well below that number. However, if we find that there is more need in the community for this program, we can adjust and reallocate 6E funds. Some of the items that we're allocating or based the 2026 budget on are for very future needs. So we have space in the program budget and other areas in 6E to make adjustments based on need. And I think that's an important point that I want to make sure is very clear to everyone. The intent of this program, one of the issues with housing in our community historically has been not only availability, that has certainly loosened up over the last 18 months, but also in price. While that has also sort of stabilized, in some cases come down, this program was aimed at addressing the affordability, that piece specifically. If we can't provide additional housing at very affordable rates based on our community's predominant level of income, then this is a way to help provide the assistance that's needed to make existing market rents more attainable for our local workforce. So it is, I believe, serving that need quite well. And there are plenty of funds available based on the need in the community.
Question?
Yes, sir.
A feeling where most of these applicants are coming from, where did they find out about this program? Go get stuff on other areas that we do have the money and there's a crying need, another way to get more people involved, either marketing to their employers, to let the employers know through the chamber or something. I'm just
Yeah.
spitballing.
That's a great question. There are a number of residents that have transitioned housing, and so they have been in one subset of housing, whether it's EPHA, prospector, private landlords, that were receiving funds, and then when they move on, they take that knowledge with them and they apply again for their new housing. Because the landlord has been receiving funds for assistance, that landlord or that property manager understands that this prospect still has handouts that they packets and a number of reality. There are private landlords who rent, rooms or a couple of rooms in their homes, and we work with some of them, but the majority are property managers, and so they have that information. The interest, and so it's heavily advertised by word of mouth. It's still at this point really haven't had to do that much outside marketing because the word is traveled. So the management companies in general have that info and they share with applicants, current residents. Then we see a lot of people in the office where we share that information. And of course, our property managers for workforce housing share with applicants.
And I'll add on to, I did reach out to the Chamber of Commerce, so they put something on their social media to push that. We've added it into our language for our top of the list letters for specifically Fall River Village Lower that we're trying to lease up. And so that we've broken out like, these are our prices, but there's this program that if you're eligible for, these could actually be your reality prices. And so that's out there. And then I was going to speak on it. I went to the high school resource fair last night. And so I speak on it there. This is just in the last month. I attend a mental health meeting over at the library every month, and that has hospital representative, school representative, Crossroads, Summit Stone, Salute, us, a majority, like there's a lot of people in the room that I was the guest speaker for that. So speaking on the programs, everything that we operate on. And so it's, yeah, like you said, word of mouth, and I've been talking a lot.
Yeah. Well, thank you. This just seems like a smashing success. Yeah. Getting the money to people who need the money, and we have the money there. There are a lot of disagreements in this community about housing, but workforce housing, nobody seems to have a problem with, and we need to support that folks. And so kudos to you both.
To me, it's these two.
Software conversion for comment. So we've mentioned this before. We are several months into future property management and accounting software conversion to Yardi. And so Yardi will house our property management, our maintenance, our financials, all be integrated, and will likely make all of our lives. And so next week is one of the first on-site training. It's called the initial conversion validation. And there are several data imports into Purdy that will happen before we go live in October. And this is kind of an initial test. It's more on the Section 8 housing choice voucher side of things that we don't manage. Here in Estes Park, Loveland manages all of that on our behalf. We're just the imports for those units. And so this one is not extremely relevant to us, but the week following is the last 2 weeks in March. Several of us will be attending essentially the first housing trainings. So it's 3 days each week. We'll be down at Loveland, and we'll start to get our hands a little dirtier with it. But it's a ton of work. Everyone in the EPHA office has a responsibility and is helping out. And so we're moving along smoothly. Our consultant is impressed not only by us, but LHA and the work that we're putting into it and our dedication to get out of HMS and into ERD. So we're not seeing any roadblocks, hiccups, issues. We're kind of scheduled in some regards and right on schedule for everything else. And then, do you want to talk about Farmyard or
Yeah, I'll mention it real quick, but before I do, I want to reiterate the intense nature of a system conversion of this type and scale. I've been through a few of them in my career, and they are significant lifts for the team as our normal workload doesn't cease. We don't get to just transition, ignore everything else and work on this. So I want to commend the team. Jeff has spent a tremendous amount of time in the background getting set up, done correctly, and getting the RD team everything they need. It'll continue to take a significant amount of time, and quite frankly, it'll ratchet up a little bit as it'll begin to involve more members of the team until final conversion scheduled for October. So I just want to commend the team and openly acknowledge that this will continue to be a large commitment on behalf of the team, take a lot of our time. So if we seem a little scatterbrained or stressed at times, this is one of those contributing factors as we try to kind of rebalance our workload and make sure we're focusing on the things that can have the highest impact and are most important at this time. So there are some things that we've had to put on the back burner as we focus on this. Another new system, not a conversion, but an item that is of vital importance to any organization is how we manage performance of our team, our goals, how we provide feedback in all directions. And we, due to the small nature of our team, while we have a process, it is fairly informal of how we handle performance reviews. The rhythm has been relatively normal, but given our amount of growth over the last couple of years, we've kind of fallen out of that normal rhythm, certainly much more than we want to on the annual performance review side of things. So I've been eyeing some solutions to help with that for a couple of years at this stage. And I was ready to pull the trigger in late 24 for 25, but actually didn't because I thought we could pull off a more formal system using software that we already had. And then midway through 25, or really in Q1 of 25, realized that solution, while it could work, no one on the team really had time to dedicate to make that happen and build something from scratch. So I went back to a solution called PerformYard. I had a couple formal meetings with their group, and then brought Jessica and Jeff along to sort of preview the software. We all agreed that it would be a positive change, would give us tools we needed to make our process of internal reviews, feedback, goal achievement, all of those things more easily attainable. So we've been going through for the last 2 months, just about, I think, going through training, a very organized stepped training system with PerformYard. And then we go live with that tomorrow. Our representative at Perform Yard will actually train the entire team, starting with the first quarter cycle of reviews, which will include sort of reviews in multiple directions. So we're looking forward to that. We've already been using it sort of internally before we roll it out. But that is also something that has taken some of our time and effort and energy. But I think we're excited about rolling that out finally this week. And I think we'll see some positive outcomes from it. I was also sharing, I had an opportunity last week to share it very briefly with Stacy, just by happenstance. And it also has a survey tool, which it's been high on my radar to do surveys of our staff and even of the board for a long time. We did for about 6 months or so in 2022 do some employee surveys, but the engagement level was a little bit low, and it seemed like an added task that people weren't loving. So I pulled it back. We were going to bring it back, and then our lives changed pretty dramatically with the passage of 6E. So this will provide us an opportunity to have anonymous surveys across a whole scope of issues. The board can certainly be involved in that as well. So the platform is pretty robust, but easy to use at the same time. So we're excited about that.
I'm excited to see y'all use it.
Yeah.
Right.
We'll jump into operation updates. So we ended the month with 69.5 in delinquencies and 24,000 of that being in current tenants, while 45.5 is from past tenants. The vacancies, the team ended the month with 14 vacancies, while we did 8 move-ins occurred within the month. And then I know as of now, and that number has probably changed since last week. We've done 4 move-ins for the month of March so far. Out of the 14 total vacancies, 4 of those we have on hold for various reasons. 2 of them are the 4-bedroom and the 1-bedroom on Fall River Upper for potential childcare. And then 1 bedroom, we have 1 3-bedroom out on the upper that we're holding for the potential sale of that unit. And then 1 bedroom, 1 studio is still on hold at Beaverbrook, but we're anticipating that being off hold by the end of this month. So we can send out top of the list letters and bump up our portfolio from 1 studio to 2 studios that we own and operate. So that'll be filled in no time when that does go live. For Fall River Village lower lease up, Susan ended the month in February with 2 move-ins with another 8 anticipated for March. And I would say that number might even be more as of now. Before I wrote this report, we're really feeling the season pick up. That we've had lots of movement at Fall River Village. I've been speaking with employers for master leasing over there. So a few employers around town have come to us saying, I have J1 students coming in. I need 1 unit. I need 2 units. They have 10 students coming in. So I'm working with those employers to do a master lease. And the ideal world would be that we master lease with that employer and they take the housing rental out of their wages. And so there's a lot less us going after the employee, hey, you didn't pay your rent, hey, you've left the country, kind of thing. It's a backstop for us if we have that employer involvement. And so working with those employers. And then things are going really well with the Colorado Renters Reward Program. We've got movement, anytime that so the lower level and the upper level still have to come into our office to pay their monthly rent. And so if they're from the lower, Wendy and I are always like poking our head out. Hey, have you signed up yet? Like, it's free money. And so we're still pushing the word out on that program. And then even the upper people, they're like, can we get that benefit too? And we're like, no, unfortunately not. And So we have some residents I'm speaking with that's even toying with the idea of relocating to Fall River Village just to capitalize on that program. So that's, yeah, more on that. We can move into, so we've got, I think we've already kind of touched base on all the looking forward projects. I talked about the studio at the Beaverbrook crossings. We talked about Yardy. We talked about Perform Yard. And then just spring is coming, so we're always taking bids on capital improvement jobs that we have coming down the pipeline. Any questions? Well, did you guys all receive these reports before this meeting, or is this the first time seeing these charts? If you have any questions on them, the first one's goes over, it kind of breaks it out of current tenants and vacant tenants for delinquencies, and then I've split up what is dwelling rent versus additional charges. And then the next one is just property specific. So we break it down into Cleve Street. You see that Cleve Street is still on a great winning streak of 0 vacancies, 0 vacancy losses. Delinquencies are really good for that property. Wendy does have 2 vacancies coming up. The tenants gave us enough notice ahead of time, so she's been running top of the list letters to screen for those 2 potential move outs. So we'll see what that number ends in March, how quickly we can get them moved in, those units turned. I think we got some work to do on one, right? Yeah. And yesterday, there are a few errors. So on the next page on Falcon Ridge, that pace on the upper right chart that says 8% pace, that should say 17%. I did not move my decimal over to represent February month. And then there may be one other, the next page as well, Grand Estates, I missed. But yesterday, what Jeff and I decided to do last week, we've been having weekly all staff meetings, and what we decided last week is to break off I'll call them departments, to where I hold a weekly meeting with just the property managers. He's holding a weekly meeting with just the maintenance. And so I held mine yesterday with the property managers, and we kind of went over this on the big screen, and it really just highlighted to the property managers of like, all right, this is what your budget is for the year, but when you break it out into 12 months and they live 30 days by 30 days and repeat, I think it was eye-opening to be like, okay, for Falcon Ridge, I have $1,500 in vacancy loss as cushion, and I've already, I'm already 30 or 7, 8 in the hole and stuff. So it was a good way to see the property managers be like, aha, okay, how can we flip these units quicker? How can I get these top of the list letters out sooner and stuff? So they really liked that kind of back to basics, one-on-one way of doing things. So I think we'll be able to see some progress of flipping units, getting that vacancy loss down is really my goal this year for the property managers. Any questions on vacancy loss, delinquencies? Yeah.
What would be, from the experience of everyone, what would be, say, the top 2 reasons why people leave, other than not paying the rent?
Well, I don't.
Household size.
Household size, I was gonna say, unfortunately, deaths. We had another death at Talon's Point. So it was full, Marianne celebrated, and then unfortunately we had a passing. And so this, on the month of March, she'll have a vacancy there. Yeah, I would say I think I'm thinking of Lone Tree, Talons Point, Falcon Ridge are income restricted properties. They do not receive that workforce rental assistance either. And so there's not as much funding out there for assistance. There's Crossroads will assist. They cap their assistance so they can't keep going back.
Yeah.
So if life throws one of our residents a wrench of, I lost my job or my car broke down and stuff, and then they fall behind in rent, they move on because they can't afford to catch up. So affordability is still a struggle for some families out there. Yeah. Mhm. And then transfers, we do in some of those, like the one there's a vacancy at Talons Point on the unit turnover, the very last page. That's, we do a lot of internal transfers from, like Wendy had mentioned, bedroom size. So people are growing their families, and so they moved in with us at Lone Tree 5 years ago in a 2-bedroom. Now they need a 3-bedroom, or they moved in and they didn't really matter about stairs. Now they can't do stairs. So kind of aging in place is another internal transfer. So that's, we flipped this unit because somebody moved on. Now we've got another unit that we have to flip, but we've got a person in where they're gonna stay a lot longer. So yeah.
All right.
Other questions?
Alright, anybody else? Okay, so next, old business.
The operating plan has not yet reached a phase where I'm willing to put the draft in front of this board, so that is not in your packet.
Okay.
Vistarage deed restrictions, we finally did receive a email from legal counsel for Ms. Hoagland. As mentioned to this board last month, to really stop taking action as she involved legal counsel. We provided a fairly robust response about the entire history and our process to date. It took, I think, 5 weeks for her legal counsel to get back to me. She did finally get back to me a few days ago, or middle or late last week, indicating really no input from our letter that I provided them and just looking for us to next steps. So I said, okay, we'll continue down the path that we were on as originally discussed with the Hoaglands. I have not had an opportunity to dive back into that in the last few days. So I will, upon my return, the last couple of weeks of March, dive back into that and see if there's a path forward without amending or re-recording a new deed restriction. And it will be primarily based on that initial valuation. So no progress. That's where we stand. I'll work on it in the latter part of March. Office move, waiting on a revised quote and then timeline on that. But I did actually receive confirmation last night that they are making progress on that. So hopefully soon we'll have an idea of what that could look like for us. And CCRD, the hearing was held. I was formally deposed prior to that hearing. I'm really in an attempt to have me not have to attend the hearing. I still attended the hearing, and they actually moved my portion up to the beginning as to not hold me for the entire day. The hearing didn't end up lasting more. I think it was about 4 hours, 3 hours, somewhere in there. I was able to stay during most of it. And we don't know when we will expect a judgment from the judge. It could take a few more months. Administrative processes do not move very quickly. So no real update there.
All right. So with that, does anybody, we can go around the room, see if anybody has anything else. We'll take a break and then we'll move into executive session.
I had comments that he was going to add to the agenda right here. Is that right?
Potentially.
Potentially. Oh, do you want that?
okay.
No,
We gave you the leeway. under the
You did.
revised agenda.
You did. Thank you. Yeah, so I want to make just a few points, and it's some of the items that we've discussed today. I want to add a little bit of commentary to as well. So Jessica was discussing operational reports. You asked the question about why people move on. And really that brings to mind something that I was already going to mention. We try to make all our decisions based on data, and alter changes in our operation based on data, and not just feelings. We like to back up whatever we're feeling with actual numbers. And we've instituted a number of processes that really go back, some of them as far as 2020, that it's actually rather astonishing now the amount of data that we have. And it starts from some of our processes from the moment we send out what we call top of list letters when we have a vacancy. Every person that we've screened or sent a notice to, we have a record of that. We have how they responded. That data is only as accurate as the property managers are in recording it, but I believe they are fairly accurate in recording that. So we have nearly 5 years plus of data of how people have responded, when they haven't responded, and then what the ultimate outcome of a potential screening was, whether they moved in, they didn't qualify, they passed for whatever reason, all of those items. We also keep reason. I still revert back to my hospitality world and I call them turnaway codes. But when people move out, we code them in this system about why they move on. So we have that data, so we could provide a report on why people move. I think Jessica did a good job of conceptualizing why folks move on without that data. And then Jeff and I were talking recently about all of the qualifications that Jeff does related to workforce rental assistance, all the deed restrictions that we monitor compliance for on an annual basis. We now have years of that data as well. And we obtain additional information during those processes simply so we have that information and data, because it allows us an opportunity to really have a unique picture of the market, the housing market, the rental market, to some degree the ownership market as well. Who's doing what, how far they're having to stretch to afford whatever is available, all of those factors. So we've been talking internally about are there any tweaks to our processes to allow that data to be as useful as possible to us, because those can also help inform Pete and I and this board about as we pursue new developments. It really backs up what the needs assessment says. We, of course, conduct market studies, but we have that. My point here is that we have access to a tremendous amount of data about what's going on in our community, and we can leverage that data to affect change and alter our course if and when needed. So I just wanted to share that we've had some internal conversations about that data, how we can tweak it, and then really formalize a system of reporting on all of that information that we have our hands on. So over the course of 2025, I almost said remaining months in 2025, getting a little ahead of myself. It is still only March. What did I just say? 25? Goodness gracious. And today's Wednesday, I leave tomorrow. Make sure I'm on the plane. As we go through 2026, don't be surprised if you see us share some of that reporting and our findings from all that data we have with you all, because some of it could surprise us once we actually dive into it. I also wanted to comment on a really constructive conversation that Marty, Stacy, and I had last Thursday. Whew. Lots gone on since then. And really the conversation centered around how we interact with our community, and more specifically, how EPHA interacts with our community regarding new development. Our conversation was primarily centered around fish hatchery, since that's our largest development project at the moment. And one, I want to thank you both for your time. We spent about 2 hours discussing various things, and I found it to be very constructive. And there were some really simple, basic, low-hanging fruit items, as I'll call them, that came out of that conversation that I think we can implement. Primarily, it's Pete and I's responsibility to implement, that are relatively easy. And one of those was we've really made an effort related to fish hatchery and the development to go above and beyond. I have a vision in my mind about what that looked like or was could look like. And really, while we've been complimented on our efforts from town staff, members of the public, I think this board, it hasn't met my expectations in reality, but there are capacity limitations as well. Time, effort, energy, money, all of those things come to play. But our conversation really highlighted a couple simple areas. And one of those was something as simple as if we hold a public meeting to provide in short order a summary of what was discussed in that meeting, talking points that were brought up, raised by the public, and then to some degree, how we're addressing those concerns, commentary, how we take that feedback and then use it in our conversations as a development team. And I showed a couple items in there where we, a point of contention, which is evidenced by 1125, also known as ballot initiative 300, is that sense or feeling of involvement, whether that matches reality or not. Certainly the impression is that there are development applications or processes that happen that the public or certain members of the public have not felt adequately involved in those processes. And one of the things I think we can do, which is relatively easy for us to accomplish, is provide that immediate feedback loop. If we go all the way back using fish hatchery, for example, in our initial public meeting, which was now over a year ago, which was not in the development process, not required, it was above and beyond. And we've held a few of those that were outside of the scope of the formal process. In our second meeting, we did in fact recap what was said in the previous meeting. Public feedback we received both in email, comment cards, our conversations after that meeting. But we didn't, while we shared it in our second presentation, there was a 6-month gap or so between those meetings. And I think that was one of the points that Marty brought up, is that that large gap makes it feel as though we are not taking or hearing public feedback, not addressing it, and just sort of ignoring it, that we are checking a box. Nothing could be farther from the truth, but yet I really felt and heard that feedback, how that could come across from the other side of the coin, so to speak. So one of the items that I showed Stacy and Marty in that meeting was an example of what we do internally and how seriously we take that feedback. Those individual comment cards, those handwritten comment cards, of which over the course of the 3 or 4 meetings that we've held, I think we've received nearly 100. I haven't done a formal count of all of them. They've all been independent of each other, but so we've received quite a few. One example is we take those, I actually typed them out as they were written. Mostly I could read the handwriting. There were a few that were a little difficult to read. But then I also code each one of those on that summary to the actual card itself and have put both those documents together so you can see that I'm not ad-libbing or taking liberty with what the handwritten comment card is. You can tie 1 to 1 or comment card 4 to 4 and see exactly what's typed and versus what was written. And not only do we go through that step, they're all scanned in, we have them saved. The development team reviews those after every public meeting. We go through them literally line by line. What did we hear? What are we hearing from the community? Are there adjustments that make sense? Are there adjustments that simply aren't feasible? So our meeting and conversation was again really beneficial, where I think we can institute some things such as, once we have a public meeting, we can turn around a summary of that meeting relatively quickly, because we generally do that work anyway. It's not a huge additional lift for us. Some other items that were discussed that may be a little less feasible, having monthly update meetings as it relates to new developments. Public meetings are, they take a lot of effort. We take them very seriously, so we prepare very diligently for them ahead of time. They take hours of preparation work from multiple members of the development team. And I don't say that to mean that it's time wasted or not ill spent. I think it's absolutely critical that we take that time. I'm simply acknowledging that it takes a lot of effort and time of a small staff to do that. So I don't think monthly meetings or updates would be appropriate nor feasible to pull off. But that's largely a component of this meeting as well. The development memos that Pete spends time to put together every month. And we can make little tweaks, making sure those are actually not only in our board packet, but available on our website in a couple areas. We could send those out proactively. That was another item that we discussed to our distribution list for fish hatchery. Just making sure that folks are staying informed and they don't have to be quite as active in searching out those items. So hopefully that was a decent summary. But I found it very beneficial and productive. So I think we'll make some small tweaks on the operations side and how we communicate information and the frequency in which we communicate that information. So hopefully that allows members of the public to feel a little bit more engaged and informed. Did I miss anything? Yeah.
Everything you hit on exactly what we talked about. The communication is huge. And I'm on board and engaged throughout your processes. And I think those are great ways to do that. Now I think you're so forth. Clarifying a lot of issues that people didn't really understand for this very series. So thanks for that comment. So Scott, as you know, Alan is looking at advising development. And one of the issues is community engagement and informational development. And I think you've shown a great success here with reviews. And there's going to be a couple things. I hope you talk to the consultant on this, because I think some of the things we're looking at include, rather than one community meeting, multiple community meetings. For a couple of reasons, but one is that a lot of times you have this community meeting and people come and they know nothing about the project. They don't even know what questions to ask. And so it's helpful to not only have the feedback loop that you're talking about, but an opportunity for the community to come in again after that feedback, so they know more about the project and they know how the developer has responded to the concerns. So I know I'm going to recommend that we have a pre-development public meeting for the pre-application, because the other thing that happens is, and this hasn't happened really with the housing authority, private developers, they kind of get locked into the approach early along because they spend a lot of money getting ready for that pre-application. They have design things done, and it's very hard for them to pivot when they spent that kind of money in the process. So the idea would be that your initial pre-development, pre-application meeting would be purely conceptual of what the developer's thinking, what the type of thing they're thinking of developing, and getting a reaction to that, followed by the commentary. I think what you're talking about with the few comments, where you actually present the comments that you've heard at the pre-application meeting at the town, and I appreciate you publishing it. And that gives the process a better chance to, through an iterative process, to succeed, to get past the concerns, because a lot of the concerns that comes up, not all of them, but a lot of them are issues of mitigation that can be addressed. Sometimes, they're used to kill a development, right? But a lot of times they're legitimate concerns that can be mitigated and will be mitigated. It's a bigger problem, frankly, with private developers, because I know private developers tend to look at those community meetings as what a pain in the ass. And, we have to do them, but again, we don't want to do them. And we've already decided what we want to do. But I do think for the community engagement and to help get a better development process where we really are responsive to the community concerns while still respecting the private property rights of whoever's developing, do what they want with the property. This is an opportunity, I think. I really commend the Housing Authority for how they did it, because
you know, when you look at the difference between what private developer did in the prior iteration of the Shaft Street and what we have today, they're radically different. And that radical difference has been largely a response to community engagement. So I think to a certain extent, the way you're doing it is kind of a model that we may want to figure out how to incorporate into the development plan as we go through this process.
And I think also along that line, I think Peakview, using that as an example, get two, correct me if I'm wrong, two community meetings. And in my opinion, we heard residents, because one of the main things, the folks at the back, that lot, was concerned about their view. If you look at Peakview, they can look straight out towards their view, which we honored. Plus, when we built the project, those on the south units, the balconies face south. And on the other one, so they could see. And we went through that with the community. Now, that project's a lot smaller, branded than Fish Hatchery. So part of it's because of the size, obviously, Fish Hatchery. So we have everyone involved. National Park, we just have tons of people involved, and I think you're right. And we need to communicate with it. And I think, as you pointed out, we as the housing authority take a more holistic approach to how we present it to the community.
Yeah, and I think my point too is you have a leadership role in the whole community.
Right.
Development of this stuff.
Absolutely.
And particularly the development.
Yeah, no, I think that's great.
You raised some good points. I think we could talk about this topic for a long time, and we're running out of time. So I won't make any additional comments, but I think I would agree there is an opportunity for some of that process to change while acknowledging development is complicated and underlying rights to use of land do exist. And there are real investment costs that go into pre-development that, again, cannot be ignored. I'm done. I am done.
All right. Anybody have anything additional to add? Jen?
Nope.
Pete? Mindy? Okay. Harley? Jen? Julie? All right. What about
And-
you, Marty? No? You're good? All right.
And just for the record, I will be ending this recording. We will be going into executive session, which we actually should, well, we'll do that in a moment. So we'll end this recording. We'll read into executive session after we end the recording. I don't anticipate any action, but we'll come back into a regular session. I'll attempt to start the recording again in case there are any actions.